Today's show was recorded live at Paradiso, North Charleston's premier family-friendly social club. Dine, swim, and vibe with Paradiso. The restaurant and market are open to the public. For hours and membership inquiries, go to paradisochs.com or call 843-885-4663. Hey everybody, this is Devin. This is the Shrimp City Report. We're here. I'm flying solo today on location at the Paradiso Cabana Club, our good sponsors that allow us to come here. And we are recording in a cabana as usual. So yes, you hear some ambient sounds of soothing cars or planes, then you know you're in the right place. Today we have a special guest that's doing a big show in Charleston and is doing a big, frankly, thing nationwide. It's Scott Doc Varn. We know him as Doc, and anyone that may be listening knows him as Doc as well. Glad to have you on, Doc.
I'm glad to be here.
So how in the world did you get
I knew it was
to
coming.
Charleston for... Okay, but you know what? Let's not even do that. Let's go ahead and take a more Dora the Explorer approach. Where are you from?
Well, I'm actually from South Carolina, so
Okay.
this is a little bit of a homecoming for me.
Okay. And where do you live now?
Now I'm actually in the hills of North Carolina. I
What?
like to tell people that now, all these South Carolinians here and all these Charlestonians,
Right.
yes, I have my head in the clouds, but I still have sand in my shoes.
Okay,
I
cool.
never really left home.
Yeah, because, I mean, this is a Sandlapper podcast,
Absolutely.
and Shrimp City is what we're calling Charleston now. Hopefully it hits. What constitutes the hills of North Carolina?
For me, the western North Carolina side is, most people know it as Asheville, the home of Biltmore, but there's a lot more
Yeah.
than that big old house.
Oh, yeah. I'm wearing an Asheville tourist T-shirt
Now,
right
look at
now.
you. I was
Yeah.
noticing you representing there.
Yeah, my son used to live there. So, yeah. So that's Western North Carolina, beautiful. I love it. I love Eastern Tennessee as well. This podcast, everyone, is art-centered and history-centered and just creativity and inspiration-centered. So
That's why I'm glad to be here. All
Right.
those are all of the points I love so
Right.
much. That's why we created what we did so
Yes.
many years ago.
excellent. Let's just get to the brass tacks right now.
Yeah.
You have a very anticipated show at the City Gallery in Charleston, and that is let me get this right, preserving art.
Preserving, shall I?
Yeah, please.
It is a mouthful. It's Preserving A Picturesque America.
Okay.
That's the name of our organization, but just call us Papa.
Okay.
It's much easier. P-A-P-A, Papa is much easier to deal with.
Papa works for me. The Papa is how many days or how long does this show happen?
Well, the overall show is 150 years in the making, but we've been struggling with finding these locations, which I'll tell you more about soon, in Charleston for at least 10 years. And we've been working on just creating this particular show for a year and a half.
Oh my.
So it's a long-term endeavor. And we do this all over the nation, but this time is Charleston's turn, is South Carolina's turn to do something fantastic.
That must be just an incredible coordination effort to try it. I mean, seriously, if you're
It is.
if you're hitting a lot of cities, and we'll talk about more what you're doing, but the time that's taking to do a thoughtful event logistically and everything, that's just amazing. Is it a kind of show where you are presenting it? Do you do the art? Do you have guest artists? How does this work?
It is a wonderful collaborative effort. One of the things that's also unusual about the show that you're going to get to see here in Charleston, the City Gallery, is that it's not one particular type of art. As we've been doing this around the nation, often people have said things like, well, this is only going to be oil paintings, right? Or the Watercolor Society of America said, oh, you'll only accept watercolors, right? Say, absolutely not. Our tagline is preservation through the power of the arts. And we mean all arts. We mean music, we mean dance, we mean poetry, writing. But in a show like this, it's a very visual medium.
Right.
It's more sculpture, watercolors, pastels, charcoal, oils, of course, as well. So we're not particularly snobbish about it. We want many voices. One of the things we like to say is to make a good choir, you need many voices. You need the tenors. You need the altos. If it's all sopranos, this would be damn boring.
Yeah.
Everything would look exactly the same, using the same techniques. No. So if I may point out one aspect of the show that I think a lot of people will love, and this is going to have to be followed up with why we're doing this.
Right.
But we will have a piece of art on the wall that is from the 1800s, a depiction of Charleston, and it will be surrounded by artwork by contemporary artists here in Charleston. All of their different versions of the same place 150 years later.
Wow. So it's multiple artists. I thought maybe there would be just one person that was interpreting it, but...
No. We have over 40 South Carolina artists in this show.
That's such a... South Carolina has some, kick-ass artists. And there's
Absolutely.
Quite a generational thing of art in Charleston with, the ones that I know, many people in the family, and they're passing it along. And hell, everybody I know has got a studio of some sort in there. But, I'm also married to a painter. So
so you're a little biased.
Yeah. No, I'm just, I'm flabbergasted. I thought it would just be a kind of a one-to-one. But if you have multiple interpretations of that, that's going to be... frankly, awesome to
it really is a choir sitting there. So you look at it, and it's funny how we've done this in other places in the nation as well, and people will look and they'll see the old original, and then they see all the other artwork and they go, wait a minute, this is all the same place. And we're like, yes, but they're all so different. I go, yes, isn't that wonderful how different they are? And the way that artist vision sees it. I would hate to have a dozen paintings up that looked almost like they were the same artist.
Yeah.
So when you go into many shows, and I do love these sort of shows where it is something that's celebrating a particular artist and seeing him speak in different ways or her speak based off the different things that they want to encompass. That's great. That's a wonderful show, but this one's a little different.
I'm really kind of dumbfounded by that, because I can't wait to see what everybody is interpreting, and that truly is the spirit of art.
And so one of the things we love about our project is we're giving these artists an opportunity to do something that's very, very different. And now we're kind of baiting all of this. The reason we're doing this hasn't really unfolded yet, but they're going to places all together as a group. We have what we call paintouts. So we're inviting all of these people to say, we have a special location we want you to come to. And then we're actually showing them artwork from 150 years ago of a publication called Picturesque America. And then we're saying, we're going to do the modern interpretation of this. And when they do that, they're like, but to what end? And that's one of the most important things about what we do. We're actually a nonprofit. PAPA is a group that does this all around America, but we do it in everyone's backyard in these places that were incredibly significant in the 1800s.
Okay, it's all 1800s. That's fantastic.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So it all came from a publication. Brought you a present, by the way.
Okay.
You want to see this?
Yeah, I want to see that.
All right. So I wish this was a little bit visual, but this is one of the 150-year-old books.
Holy smokes.
And this publication was by Appleton Press. After you got one of these every month of a different place around America, you would take it to your local bookbinder.
This volume is humongous. That's beautiful.
And it's gilded, and it has engravings. This was the only way to publish things in the time. And to be able to, with hot lead type, put an image and text on the same page in the 1800s was a very big deal. So the significance of this publication, I had no idea about. There's a very long story that I'll spare you of. I don't know how long the podcast runs.
We can run whatever. We can take the Reader's Digest version.
Well, the elevator pitch, if you will, is I had no understanding of this publication. It was not in my knowledge at all. I do love history, and obviously I'm an artist, so How did I not know about this publication? Well, it's one of those publications that's falling out of knowledge except for true historians. They use this publication all the time to say what was the lens people were looking through right after the Civil War. And the thing that they were doing the most of than anything that was published was reconciliation.
Yeah, that's a good point. Do you find, in it, reading through that and looking at it, there was any kind of a more hopeful outlook with this?
There was. Actually, there was an air of optimism that was very important during that time. They were so war-torn.
Right.
I mean, you know is the bloodiest battle in American history, especially on American soil.
Yeah, like Antietam and...
Right, because both sides, both were Americans killing each other. And, just everything that happened during that time was not trying to be forgotten as much as healed. So many people can identify with the fact that when you're having conversations with people that might be politically different or different beliefs or whatever, you still care for these people. And you're trying to find common ground. This publication in the 1800s was trying to do the same thing on a level even greater than we have today. And that one thing that they could all agree on was the beauty of this nation. So the subtext and subtitle of the publication when it came out kind of as a magazine form was America, the Land We Live In, which I'm going to repeat because of that motorcycle.
Okay.
This subtitle of the Picturesque America publication was America, the Land We Live In.
Right.
Which was an interesting statement. I didn't quite understand it when I first heard it. They were describing the fact that most Americans still didn't even understand the length and the breadth of their own country.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yes, you were fighting each other. Yes, you were killing each other over this war. But you didn't understand the South from New York perspective. And the Southerners didn't really understand anything over the Mason-Dixon line at all. We didn't have the modes of travel that we have today. I mean, not just the railroads, were also destroyed. So they were just now coming back. This publication started in 1870 and went to 1874.
Okay, so just 4 years then.
Right.
But
every month you would get a different serial. It's kind of like National Geographic, but before National Geographic existed. And this is one of the publications that inspired that sort of travel log adventure sort of space.
Yeah, I think that's, well, I think about the Civil War, even, just 1860, 1864. A lot of those folks had probably never traveled outside of their county. And then all of a sudden they're in Fredericksburg or Gettysburg or going to Texas, That's just
that was
astonishing.
mind-blowing, but they marched the whole way there, too.
Yeah, I know. And it's like, man, that's either dedication or I just didn't have anything to do until next, February.
You'd have to change horses 3 times just to get to Virginia from South Carolina.
Right. So going to that, and I was I'll tell you, I didn't do a complete dive into this because I wanted to be more awestruck or learn or whatever. So in my mind, I thought, well, maybe these artists, which I had no idea there were so many of it, were taking maybe some famous sketches of Charleston that you've seen a million times, and they were doing their interpretation. But you're actually using stuff out of the publication,
correct?
A Picturesque America, which is, I guarantee you, a lot of us have never seen a thing in that book.
Well, it's funny. I will say where I have found it, many museums use the artwork out of this.
Okay.
Because they're historic and they're usually very accurate. But also, because of the Great Depression, that's how I got my first copy of one of these engravings.
Right.
I didn't get the books originally. Discovering this over 14 years ago when we started the nonprofit, I received an engraving because I saw it in an auction. I said, wait a minute, that landmark, that rock face is something that I recognized. It was outside of Hot Springs, North Carolina, on the Appalachian Trail. And I think I know that. And as a woodcut artist myself, that's the kind of artwork I do. I do engravings, steel engravings, woodcuts. And I was going, whoa, that's a master. I've never seen this before, but that artwork is spectacular. Well, I got it in an online auction, only to find out that somebody had cut it out of one of these volumes that their grandmother had and sold it to me. But during the Depression, this was very common because anything for a buck. They would take their grandmother's book, this amazing leather-bound book, slice that out with a knife, throw some watercolor on it, and sell it to somebody in the cheapest frame they could. If they could make $5, they would take it. So all around the country, as part of our project, it's funny. I've been in people's homes, and they go, is this an original? I take it out of the frame, and I look at it and go, oh, my God, you actually have a 150-year-old. They go, we had no idea. And they find out their grandmother had bought it, 80 years ago.
What a story. And I didn't know that folks recycled or, reused it for...
it's kind of sad. You don't want to slice a book up. I would never recommend that. But at the same time, for me, it's part of the Picturesque America story because I knew nothing about it. Just as so many people in America, I mean, I would say a very small percentage are aware of this publication, but the historians are, because it was one of the most significant things to ever help create the conservation and preservation movement. These artists, these writers, and the poets that contributed to this were amazed at the places they were going to. Okay, just wrap your head around this as a job. If you're an artist listening to this now, a publication house said, we're going to pay your expenses, bring your art kit, and go find the most amazing places in Virginia. Now I want you to go down to South Carolina and find the most beautiful places and paint those and just bring me a portfolio back. We're going to pay for all your expenses, and then we'll pay you for each painting when you come back.
Yeah, what's the catch?
Yeah,
what
is that right? Right.
That sounds absurd.
And this is the job of these people. And so you would have a writer travel with the artist, and as you read these, because we've actually reprinted the original serial from Charleston, because so many people have said, wait a minute, I really want to read these stories. I really want to see this artwork. And unfortunately, all the 150-year-old copies are in museums or rare bookstores and very expensive. So we've, as one of the many fundraisers we do as a nonprofit, we have a reprint of that. It's actually available. The Preservation Society has it at their store. Oh, all right. Which is, of course, one of our beneficiaries. We love those guys. I mean, they're ones actually actively working on preservation. So they've got a lot of our books there to raise money for them as well. So the point going back, though, is to say that these artists and these writers spoke with a voice of concern about what was going to be lost. They would go to these places. And for instance, the first one I ever read was on the back side of that piece of artwork I got. I get this artwork, and I'm like, awesome, man, this is amazing detail. I'm studying it, and I flip over the page to kind of look at the paper was on. I go, some SOB cut this out of a book and sold it to me. I can't believe this. But I actually was fortunate. It was very serendipitous because in that text, they were asking, what will become of this unspoiled wilderness? And this was the place where I was currently living in Western North Carolina. And I'm going, they're talking to me through time. Right. They were constantly concerned. They kept writing, and the artist's voice of the way they depicted things in this beautiful pastoral,
I love the narrative aspect, and then, but also that they are giving you a PSA almost.
Yes.
And that I always love when writers are able to not mask it, but wrap it all up in a nice package. And by osmosis, you just became an ecologist.
Right. Well, the thing is, conservation and preservation was not a thing in the 1870s.
I'm sure. After a civil war.
Nope, was not on their list. But they were realizing what was lost with that devastation. And so sometimes the best lessons we can ever have in life are from loss. It's why I never say there's a bad thing happening in my life if I learn from it. And this publication was basically talking about so much of the things that we were losing that, let me just wrap the audience head around the fact that these people accidentally helped create the conservation movement only because they cared. They gave a damn, and they were trying to... Well, it was the Romantic movement. William Cullen Bryant, the Romantic poet, was the editor of this publication.
Oh, really?
So, and his poetry and everything else, this was towards the end of his life, and I feel like it was kind of a signature thing for him to kind of go, okay, I've been writing about this. I've been wanting to touch people's hearts about the natural world. and this is going to give me an opportunity to edit this down in a way that influences. But at the same time, the publisher, Picturesque America from Appleton Press, they were not benevolent. Historically, they were trying to make money.
Yeah, and it was entertainment or whatever, leisure.
It was mass media.
Yeah.
No radio, no television. A publication that came to you once a month was something that every person in the middle class had. Now, it was a whopping 50 cents for you to get this thing, but if you had not subscribed to it, you knew someone that subscribed to it. And if you could read, you were reading this publication in the 1870s. That's how significant it was.
Okay, there's a couple aspects about this. Number one, that it even existed and people are still learning about it. I love the fact that it was distributed in the Depression in such a manner that it makes it that much cooler because there's relics of it all over the United States right now, and probably all over the world. And I'm a habitual collector of comics, mid-century furniture, all this other stuff. So the last thing I need to do is learn about something else.
This might be dangerous.
Might be on eBay. Yeah. Well, you talk about your organization. How long have you been doing that? Who had the bright idea to do that?
Well, a lot of it is a combination between my wanting to escape, my own children, and the support of amazing artists around this country.
Okay.
So when someone like myself who's always been conservation minded and also an artist, I felt like I was not giving back to my muse. The things I painted, the landscapes and the rock formations and the beautiful rivers and everything in America that I love so much. I took my kids, of course, to so many national parks and everything else. But I will say it's been my own kids that helped ignite this movement, because I was trying to be a good father. I was trying to say, we have to take care of this world we live in. We must be good stewards. And I'm trying to have a good example for them, right? I'm taking them out in nature and everything else. But my kids said to me, well, what do you do, Daddy? I'm like, well, what do I do? Well, I'm in the Sierra Club. I pay my dues. I recycle. In other words, I don't do squat.
Right.
I talk about it, but what's the action? And it bugged me for years that I was telling my kids to be good stewards of this world, and what was I doing? I mean, am I supposed to be leading by example?
Yeah, I guess.
So we all should, right?
Yeah.
And I was trying to keep my mind and heart open. And that's when that engraving appeared to me. When I found that on an online auction, and I said, what is this? Then I had to dig deeper. And once I found out from a wonderful book by Sue Rainey. Sue is a historical author, and she's from Virginia. Amazing woman. Now I have the honor to finally met her. I was a groupie of hers for years.
Okay.
Because she had this book that was the history of Picturesque America, the publication.
Okay.
And talked about the different artists that were in it and everything else. And I got that and just dove into it. And I go, holy cow, this thing was amazingly significant. And I didn't know a damn thing about it. And now I've got this thing that says Picturesque America at the top. I only have one page of words. What's the rest of this? Can I have some more, please?
Sure.
And so I actually went to a rare bookstore in Asheville called the Captain's Bookshelf. And they had a copy.
Oh, wow.
It was unaffordable.
Of course, yeah.
Because it was in pristine, beautiful condition and everything else. But they at least were kind enough to let me kind of flip through it like a public library. And
so that must have been amazing to see where your piece of art came from.
Right. I was like, holy, this is not one piece of art. Well, now I discovered it's over 950 pieces of art in this publication.
Over a cumulative, I guess?
Right, over a cumulative time.
Okay.
And so they would later bind into these giant, heavy books.
Yeah, so that's like an anthology right there.
Correct.
Okay.
And this is just one of the volumes of the anthology.
Man, that's
so
wild.
Overall, I mean, if I were to wrap this up, our purpose at Papa is now because of that inspiration that I got from my kids and the encouragement from other artists and, maybe a few drinks and them going, we should try to find these.
Yeah.
So my wife and I had an opportunity to go to Yosemite. And I go, wait a minute. So now I'm going down to the Captain's Bookshelf again. And I go, guys, can I look at the book again? And they're like, sure. And I go flipping through, and I find, sure enough, Yosemite is in the publication.
Okay.
And I'm like,
should be,
okay,
right?
I mean, come on, it's Yosemite, right?
Yeah.
But I didn't know. I'm so ignorant of this, and I find it, and I'm like, okay, let's dive deep, and I start reading and everything else. And somewhere along there, they actually said, you're going to have to buy this book.
Yeah, I know.
You're going to have the series of books, excuse me. And they gave me a very kind discount. And it was actually the first one and the most honored one on my bookshelf. It's the first copy I ever got of the publication.
Excellent.
And so then I said, okay, deep dive. And we take these volumes and I put them in my backpack. And we go to Yosemite to see if we can find these places with the encouragement of the artist going, could you be exactly where the artist was 150 years ago? And so that's what this show is all about.
Oh, okay.
Is us saying, look, do you want to go where Thomas Moran and Harry Finn and all of these artists were 150 years ago? And so once this is a giant long story, but to narrow it down, it is to say that once we go out and investigate, which takes so much work, we have talked to historians, we have talked to park rangers, we have talked to the locals to try to find the exact spot. And when I say exact spot, I'm not talking about there's Pikes Peak, somewhere in the 360s. No. Where was he where all the other rock formations were? And that 400-year-old jasmine tree, or whatever it was, and these particular rock formation. Right. All of it's got to line up perfectly. And once we do that, then we invite the artist from that area to come and depict it again. But then the conversation exploded. Again, maybe a few more drinks for the artist. But we said, and you know where I'm going with this, what can we do beyond that? So, okay, it's cool as an adventure, but then there's that little thing in the back of my head from my kids going, what do you do, Daddy? And so to do something to say, look, I'm in the same place and I can paint that same spot, just do it myself, right? Well, that's wonderful, but that's for me. That's just for me. That's for me to go, I'm there. Look at me. That's the Instagram, look at me in this beautiful place and holding up doing a selfie. No. What if we could protect the place that inspires us to create that art? So then we said, okay, all right. We need to start talking about a nonprofit. Once we were able to find those first places in Yosemite, and just, if you go to our website, there's a picture of me and my wife, ecstatic, with an open book. I mean, there's this 21-pound book that we're holding, and behind us is the cathedral spires. It's the first place we ever found. It'll always be special to me. I'm almost getting choked up thinking about it, just because it was a magic moment of connecting between the past to the present. But then we had to say, okay, how do we look to the future? And that's what does it take to protect this? Because conservation and preservation is not this one and done thing. It's unfortunately a maintenance thing that every generation has to do. And if people don't care anymore, they'll go, put condos there. Who cares?
Yeah, I guess you think if the local House of Representatives has a bill or somebody puts a plaque up there, you're good to go forever. But things change.
You have to keep screaming when all of a sudden you find out that they're going to open this up for development, that the people go, oh, hell no. This is a sacred space that needs to be left for everyone to enjoy. So what we decided then was, what can we do to protect it? But we realized we're limited. We're artists. We can maybe inspire people. We can maybe create a beautiful image. We can write poetry, do everything that the original publication did. But that's only inspiration. Who has their boots on the ground doing the actual hard work? Well, for one, it's the Charleston waterkeepers here. They're doing amazing work to keep the Ashley River clean. And people there breaking the laws with septic tanks, and people dump any damn thing they want into the river. They're the ones that are busting them and getting them into the EPA. They're the ones doing the monitoring all across the river. These people are amazing. How could we do that as artists? Not to mention, we have to go get another degree.
Well, yeah, sure. Or get
also
someone join
there are organizations in place. And so we found out these organizations are all over America. Why not take advantage of the local people taking care of their backyard? So this show is going to be helping all of the people that make Charleston wonderful. We're talking about the Gullah Geechee Historic Corridor. We're talking about, of course, the Charleston Waterkeepers. we're talking about 9 different nonprofits in Charleston that are maintaining these different places that were originally depicted in the 1800s. So here's the big deal. The proceeds from all of the artwork, the gallery fee won't be going to a gallery. It'll be going to those different nonprofits to keep that place sustained for the future.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So that's what the goal of preserving a picturesque America, Papa, is all about, because we can do this all over America, and this time it's Charleston's turn.
That's great.
For me, it's great. It's homecoming.
Yeah, it is, and you're coordinating all the organizations. I mean, frankly, all these organizations have skin in the game because they want to. They want to do what they've been doing.
Yes.
And then if you have a focal point, which I'm sorry, this is going to be an entertaining show, and it's fascinating, and folks will go out to do that. They may just go out to see the art. They may want to hear the narrative, but then they're going to see that this is actually done for a reason, a good cause. And I think it's fascinating too, the national aspect of your organization. Charleston's. This is the first time it's been in Charleston, but you've done other cities, right, or other locations. Well, right. What are some just some places you might want to mention?
Well, they went all across America, to all the places that were accessible in the 1800s, I should say. So there are certain limitations, like there's, for instance, there's Richmond, Virginia. There's the Catskills in New York.
So I guess the places that Papas have been able to at least reference. So.
Right, and the coast of Maine. But there was also places out west that were just being accessed. So I like to talk about the reason this was such a popular publication is the North didn't understand the South, South didn't understand the North, and nobody understood the West.
Yeah, I guess.
And the trains were just getting there. So even though it was starting to encourage some level of tourism as the trains expanded, it was more about the psychological aspect of knowing this land was much greater. And it helped boost us, because there's one thing that historians have taught me about this publication is that you had to understand what was going on in the dialogue of Americans and Europe. This is 1870 when they started this publication. And believe it or not, people don't talk about this, but France and England and Spain were all talking about carving back up the United States. They were like, wait a minute, this experiment they had, this Constitution, this Bill of Rights, all this stuff, it didn't work out. In publications from Europe, they talked about how boring America was.
Really?
Yes, it's amazing. So a lot of them would go to New York. And I'm not opposed to New York, but they were talking about Manhattan. They were talking about just New York City. They didn't know the Catskills. They didn't know the Adirondacks. They didn't know the Finger Lakes. All this amazing landscape that's in New York State. But one of the quotes that they put in Picturesque America is that there's no dynamic coastline. So the very first chapter in the publication was the coast of Maine, because they wanted to go, oh, you're just talking about the cliffs in Ireland and Scotland, right? And they were like, oh, you think America doesn't have cliffs? Boop, let's show you Maine.
Yeah, and it's the ship killer. I mean, there's plenty of character in that coast.
I got so many stories about our adventures in Maine and almost killing myself. Right. But I mean, seriously, twice almost died trying to do art in Maine. But that's for another podcast.
So Charleston, I mean, as I'm partial to Charleston. I think that would be I think it would be a likely location to do that. Now, Charleston loves its architecture. There's so much art done about the architecture. What's the mix on the show? How'd you pick locations? Right out of the book?
Absolutely. It is out of my control. Okay. The editor of Picturesque America made those decisions 150 years ago, and he's dictating my life essentially. Now, but that's an important point. So in the show, we have the original spots, and talked about which ones are landscape and which ones are natural. Sure. This was a very important thing, and we talk about how Europe was seeing it, but also how America was seeing it. This was a scary moment for Charleston. The earthquake had not yet happened yet. This was before the earthquake, but there was plenty of devastation. Not only was, of course, Fort Sumter in ruins, but many of the buildings in Charleston were still they were still recovering economically. as well as just structurally.
Absolutely, yeah.
So one of the most interesting things about the choices that were made by the editor is he chose to not show Charleston in ruins. Now, this is an editor from New York, and so we could say it's a damn Yankee from New York, right?
Yeah.
But he was very compassionate. Everyone's mind, again, was on reconciliation. They really wanted to reunite the Union. And so they did not want to put out there. They had no political bend on this. This was just people publishing a book. And they knew that people wanted to figure out how to get back together. So they didn't want to make the South look bad.
Right.
So there are no depictions of ruins in the publication, even though they absolutely existed. So there are a lot of natural locations, and the only architectural rendition is literally almost from a bird's eye view, from as if you were in a hot air balloon looking across White Point Garden and into the peninsula.
Oh, wow.
Now, so if there was anything in ruins, you couldn't tell because you were too far away.
Right.
You could still pick out St. Michael's, and the different churches, of course, and the different landmarks. And you see how small the live oaks were in 1870.
Yeah, sure.
There's still some cannons there, but the gazebo's not there yet, et cetera, which is one thing I love to do is that see it then and see it now.
Oh, yeah, I do too. Especially, I think White Point used to be a swamp until they filled
of course,
it in.
yeah. It's just a place to set up the cannons so they can keep firing in between there and Fort Sumter.
Absolutely.
Right? But now, of course, it's beautiful. And so many of the artists wanted to paint there. But the interesting aspect of it, again, was that they pulled away to see the beauty of the city without seeing the micro level of its still destruction. That was an editorial decision that I really respect. And there's also, the text in here is amazing. They talk about how, again, that reconciliation, this one's almost getting me choked up every time I think about it, is they mentioned that there was someone from France who supported the South.
Okay.
And there was someone from England who supported the North. And there was a Yankee.
Yeah.
And there was a Southerner of distinction.
Right.
And they go through this list of people. And they never actually say who they are, but they list their credentials without saying their names, which I thought was very interesting.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
So we're going to pick that apart one day and figure out exactly who these people were.
That's your
during
next,
that time.
Next sleuthing.
That's a puzzle I've got to decode.
Right.
You're a history person, so we should get on this next. We'll do a sequel to this. We'll pull
we
that
could.
out.
That'd be great.
But anyway, they talk about all of these, and they had a picnic at the ruins of Fort Sumter. And they say that this day was remarkably harmonious and was marked with a white stone. But there's two aspects of that. They wanted to say all of these people that would normally hate each other were coming together as a very, very important message. A message that they had then, but absolutely a message that needs to be rekindled today. We need to stop beating each other up and picking. Here we are, Carolina and Clemson people, and we still love each other, and we're still having a great time.
Oh yeah,
forget the school stuff. I instantly got to judge you because you got orange overalls, right?
Yeah,
and I've got a rooster tail on the back of my truck, right? Just some BS. Right? Yeah, we're people. We have hearts. We have things in common, and there's more that we believe in that we can agree upon honestly. Then we separate ourselves with these petty things. I think they focused on that.
Yeah, I think cultural arts and finding common ground is so important anyway. And then if you can use beauty and expression and what all cultural arts are supposed to be.
Absolutely.
I don't like when they get weaponized. I don't like when they get canceled. So something like this is beautiful. And listen, only a few years removed from the bloodiest war in American history, where there was piss and vinegar in a lot of people's brains right then, and that they could come together and this kind of beauty and art. And then you're in Charleston 150 years later, 100 whatever years later, and listen, there's not a ton of natives here. There's a lot of people from all over,
Sorry, Charleston's full. Go away.
Yeah, so the culture is blended as well. So you have artists there
True.
that are not going to be, particular.
They're not fourth-generation Charlestonians necessarily.
Right.
There's a lot, but the thing is, they've come here not just for the beauty of Charleston, but for the culture of Charleston. Which,
absolutely.
One of the first colonial cities, for crying out loud. they focused on Charleston as the city in South Carolina. Now, I have a love of all South Carolinians, but this was the time. Greenville and Columbia were not what they are today. This was a different time. But going back to that point, and I'm so glad you brought that up about what the arts do. That's why we're doing this show, is to show the power of the arts. And we feel like we're taking that baton. This was something that was started 150 years ago, helped start the preservation and conservation movement, and then just kind of fizzled away. People did not know what actually inspired what they do, and it was the arts, and it was the writing and the poetry. And you don't know how many times I've read this and had to read that line twice because of the vernacular, yes, but also because I'm like, wait a minute, that hits home. And I mean, it brings you to tears so often to now look at it with perspective of being, in this time versus the way they saw it. And it's something that we all need. That our connection to history is so critical to building a good future.
Okay, so once again, I love the fact that there's so many artists doing one thing. So you have one piece, so you have the perspective from many folks, and many folks that haven't lived their whole life looking at that same place forever, or go into Charlestown Landing when they were a little kid and knowing every tree growing up in West Ashley. So I think that's brilliant. Are there any writers associated with this, or is there any narrative as far as writing?
We're hoping to have some poetry there. Now, here's one of the most interesting aspects of what we do. So it was released as a serial, but as a nonprofit, we don't have the funding, although we will take donations, and it's preservationthroughart.org. Got to make the plug. Bam.
Promotion. And you are
the nonprofit blues. We're trying to stay alive,
Yeah.
But because one of the most difficult things we have as a nonprofit is the money that's raised from the show immediately goes to help Charleston. It doesn't go to Papa.
That's right.
It all goes to those different nonprofits. So one of the things that we do that helps us keep the lights on, essentially, but also is very important to get the word out, is we rather inexpensively create a reprint again of the original, so people can read it as it was. But here's the thing: after the show is over, the jury is selecting a different artist for each location to represent it in the new publication. I always write a new one. All the years of research, I tell the story, what has changed in the last 150 years, talk about the artist and what was their influence to do this particular piece, and then you will hear the stories of the last 150 years and the adventure of discovering these.
Oh, cool.
If you haven't seen the PBS show, so we were honored by PBS said, wait a minute, I love this story. We need to do a show on this. And so they picked Charleston, and they also picked Western North Carolina, two of my favorite places.
Of course, yeah.
And they made an episode that's still available on streaming. If you got PBS Passport, you can still see America, the land we live in. That's the name of the show. And you can see us all over finding these places in Charleston. And that adventure is important, but the show goes beyond that. It goes to the point of saying, okay, how does it look today? What can we do to protect it? And the new publication will talk about that. So you'll get to hear the adventures of how we discovered it. Because the very first one in that particular serial was a garden in Charleston. That was the entirety of the description. Thank you very much.
Yeah, that's too cool.
Charleston's so famous for its gardens, and all they said was a garden in Charleston had two antebellum ladies strolling through it, and it has, you can see the piazzas of a building in the background. I'm like, never seen that in Charleston.
So it's going to take you forever to try to figure that out.
Took us 7 years.
Oh, did you figure it out?
But we got it.
Oh my gosh.
With the help of local historians. Karen is, she's just such a sweetheart. So she she's actually in the PBS documentary as well. And she did so much amazing research to help us figure out this puzzle. Because it always is a puzzle everywhere we go. But this one had so few clues. But now I'm going to just bait that so that people can go to the PBS show and see it.
Yeah.
Because it unfolds in a way that you need the entirety of a documentary to
no
actually
spoilers
see that.
either, that's good.
But it is here in Charleston, and after 7 years, we finally found the spot that Harry Finn had rendered, and blew our mind. And the reason why he rendered that one is even more interesting. But again, I'm going to set you up for that.
So I assume that's going to be represented at the.
It absolutely will. It's
show.
One of our primary ones, and
what are tell me a couple of spots that you're super excited to have.
So there's a giant live oak that is featured. There's a garden. There's White Point Garden and the entire view of the peninsula. Yeah,
right.
that one's great. But there's also Magnolia Gardens, as well as Magnolia Cemetery.
That cemetery is dope. Awesome.
Just the live oaks there as well.
Yeah.
I mean, just what could be more quintessential old world Charleston than that? And the fact that the Hundley Patriots are buried there now, from that, I was like, whoa. I mean, the whole story of the Hundley, that's a whole podcast.
But interring them there was very cool. Anybody that comes to Charleston, folks that, we do reach folks that are not in the Low Country. Magnolia Cemetery is definitely a go-to.
It absolutely is.
It was
and we were able to find the exact spot where Harry Finn was 150 years ago. That one took a while, but part of it was there was a building that was in his rendering. The building is gone.
Okay.
Unfortunately, it burned down, and then they took advantage of that to bury more people. They said, good, the building's gone, we can, people dying to go into the cemetery.
Oh, no, I'll use that joke all the time. People are just dying to get in there.
So I'd love to be buried in that cemetery.
I do too. There's a mausoleum that's like a pyramid, an Egyptian pyramid in there.
What is with that?
I know.
I want to know the history of that thing.
I know, and I'm like, I was just. I got so jealous. I'm like, my wife Madeline, you got to hook me up with something like that. I'll even take a small one. You can fold me in half and put in it.
Can I increase my life insurance policy so I can die in a pyramid, please, honey? And you see Celtic mixed with Egyptian, mixed with typical English culture. I mean, I don't talk about a fusion. It's
I'm not going to say it's Masons, but it's probably Masons.
Yeah.
So
probably.
So I'm looking forward to the show. We're friends with Cheryl Stolnicker, Mary Hoffman. They're both going to be there. We'll definitely. I want to get on our site. Some highlights of the artists.
We have so many artists. I mean, Mary Edna Fraser, who is the first one to join.
Yeah.
She heard about our level of conservation, and she's just such a magnificent artist. And everything she fights for is saving this planet. And she was like, "I'm in." First one. And
that's a no-brainer.
And her work. You've got to come to the show and see this.
Yeah, we're definitely. I mean, we wouldn't miss it. When is the opening?
It is the 19th, July 19th, and so that'll be the opening reception.
Is
so
that
everyone's
a Thursday
welcome. It is a Friday.
Friday, okay.
And it goes from 5 to 7. And so there'll be drinks and hors d'oeuvres and such. But most importantly, we'll be giving a little bit more of the story behind this. Just a short speaking thing. I won't be boring anybody too much. But it is most important that they know who the artists were, who care about these places, who give enough. I mean, they're there not just to show off their work. Actually, most of them aren't there to do that at all.
Right.
They're to represent the places. These are the artists that care and want to give back to their muse. I tell you, one of the greatest things about this project has been meeting really my tribe. People who want to combine arts with conservation and preservation. And these are the people that first step up. The people that it's all about them, they don't step up as easily. And everybody says, how do you filter the people? I go, nope, the best people show up.
Yeah, that is interesting.
I don't have to do anything.
You don't have to do that. It's not like you're jurying people in. It's you want them to be a part of that. And frankly, if they're going to do that, a lot of, at Humanity Now, we are a culture driven by receiving, and a lot of stuff that we do is because we're expecting something in return. That's why we go to work. That's why a lot of people do a lot of things. Art is hard, and it takes a lot of time and a lot of dedication and caring. And for any artists that do charities or do organizations like that or do shows like that, I'm always just amazed. Because all the time that it takes and everything.
And some of these artists have done the spots repeatedly.
Oh.
They say, I want to come back again. Or they go, this doesn't best represent the place. They've done it during different seasons to say, I like this one better. This one I want to be in the show.
Wait, on their own?
Yes. So we scheduled paintouts to show them. But then once they knew where the spot was, they were like, oh, can I do this again? And one thing, make a little bit of a pitch too. There's a lot of artists that have joined Pop-Up. We have a very small entry fee, and there's a lot of benefits. But we had other artists from outside of Charleston who go, I love this. Can we come down and paint too? Because they've painted other places around America, and they just want to do more. So it is a national program. So artists that join now can come with us to Maine or Virginia or out to Colorado.
No, that's cool that it's not just one and done. I didn't think about it, but I guess it would be inspiring to go different seasons, different times, take people with you and have a mini paint out.
Now, one thing that's very important is even though we do have artists that were not from South Carolina, there will be winners at this show.
Okay.
So for each place, we're going to pick a particular artist who best represents the modern interpretation of that place.
Okay, great.
Now, we only do it once, though, because we don't want it to be one particular artist's show. This is for all the artists.
Right.
So I can't name any names yet because it's a surprise. But if an artist won in one category, now they're out of the running for the rest of them to give the other artists a chance. Let them all, be able to participate. But now, if you're from out of Charleston, if you're not a South Carolinian, you're not eligible for the awards.
Okay, good.
You may participate. You may help us raise money. You may be great for the cause. But we want it to be for everybody's backyard. I mean, you're protecting your home. So those are the ones we want to represent first. And, we're not shy about it. These are the artists we want to let people know are important to Charleston.
So we got it opening the 19th with the reception. There will be some presentations, some speaking. I mean, you definitely have to give a background on everything.
A little background for
right.
the audience. But the actual books will be there. People will be able to see those. They'll be under glass.
So that's good. So we'll be able to see the books.
Now, it's a long-running show. So,
it is?
So it's not just on the 19th. It will run to September 8th. I need to confirm that.
That is a long-running show.
Yeah, September 8th. So the City Gallery has been so generous. They're a wonderful venue. If anybody's never been there, they need to go to the City Gallery and keep continuing to see their shows. They curate some of the most important shows in South Carolina. It's right there near the Pineapple Fountain.
Yeah, the waterfront park.
Yep, absolutely.
It's a fantastic place.
And the very large venue, but we filled that sucker up. Matter of fact, I think they were like, oh, please, you need to,
just
not
keep
so many
coming
pieces.
and
They were like,
coming.
yeah, but there's so many good pieces of art. We had to. And so many artists that want to contribute. Unfortunately, we had to narrow it down a little bit. But it's an exhibition. I want to emphasize this, and sale. So a couple of aspects. If heaven forbid, you don't want to put art on your wall. If you just want your college posters and that's it, and you don't want real art, real original art that you should have in your home and cherish and will value, then you can still contribute to these different groups. There's literally a profile of each nonprofit that will benefit the protection of that particular oak tree. And like the Preservation Society, which does wonderful work for all of Charleston, so they will have a display. If you're not buying the artwork in order to support them, please at least donate to them, because they're the ones doing the hard work that we need to keep Charleston beautiful and historic.
No, that's great, because they're, some folks can't buy art, or they, but a few bucks here and there really.
And I will say the range is heavy. I mean, from smaller plein air pieces that anyone could afford to larger, amazing ones that are in the thousands of dollars.
Yeah, sure.
So there literally is something for everyone to do there. And I would say I'd recommend people to come fast and come early, because a lot of these pieces are going to sell out, and this is an opportunity to get something that's part of history.
Yeah, especially definitely we'll go early, because I want to at least see everything. So, yeah, we'll go ahead and plug everything. We will have it up on our website. The podcast will be out very soon.
Excellent.
And everyone can listen to that on your favorite podcast apps, or Spotify, or Apple, or Amazon. Of course, come look for us at the shrimpcityreport.com, and that will point you to everything. Want to thank you, Doc, for coming on and letting me know and letting the everybody listening know about that. It's fascinating. It was like the story was. It had more layers than I could have ever imagined. So I appreciate it. We wish you the best of luck, and we'll see y'all later.
See you at the show.
Bye.